Knowing when to start a new paragraph is really challenging. In this revision lesson, we're going to look at when we might start a new paragraph in our informational writing. Take a look at an informational article like the one you're currently writing. I want you to notice that the paragraphs are really short, 2 to 3 sentences max. That third paragraph down is only a sentence long. So you're going to keep your paragraphs in your informational article pretty short. So when should you paragraph? When should you start a new paragraph? Well, it's actually going to be up to you. However, here are some points when you might want to start a new paragraph. You might start a new paragraph if you change topics. Even the slightest shift in topic is a great time to start a new paragraph. You could start a new paragraph if you use a transition word or phrase like however, therefore, for example. That helps the reader to really follow your logic or your argument. You might start a new paragraph if you cite an example or testimony. A lot of times in informational articles, especially quotes from experts, those testimonies, they get their own paragraph. And you might want to start a new paragraph if you want something to really stand out, like your topic sentence. That topic sentence of your subtopics should have its own paragraph. So, when in doubt, if you're not sure, just make a new paragraph. Your paragraphs are going to be so short, so it's fine if you just make a new paragraph when you feel like you should. Trust yourself. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to walk you through one of my subtopics, and I'm going to paragraph it with you and talk you through why I created a new paragraph. So hopefully by the end, you might have an idea of when it feels right to make a new paragraph. But it's really not an exact science. So here's my coral bleaching subtopic. There are a lot of things that can harm coral reefs, including sunscreen, agricultural runoff, and pollution. Nothing, however, is quite as devastating as warming water. So I'm going to start a new paragraph here because I want that first, my topic sentence to really stand out. So I'm going to do this so that you can actually see this. Coral reefs are created by tiny organisms called polyps. When a polyp attaches itself to a rock on the seafloor, it divides into 1,000 little clones. Those clones connect to one another over time, creating the limestone skeleton of the coral reef. So here I have a transition word and I'm shifting topics, right? I'm both using a transition word, although, and I'm changing topics. I'm no longer talking about the coral polyps. I'm going to start talking about the coral algae, the zooanthellae. So, although polyps are the backbone of the reef, zooanthellae, photosynthetic algae that attach themselves to the polyps, is what gives the coral reefs its brilliant colors. Corals depend on zooanthellae, argues Nick Graham, a marine ecologist at Lancaster University in England. The algae provide the corals with energy and nutrients. Without them, the corals would die. So I have a choice here. I could make this its own paragraph because it is a quote from an expert. It is testimony. However, because it's really describing this photosynthetic algae, I'm going to keep it with that first sentence about the zooanthellae. So I'm going to start a new paragraph here because I'm going to move on to talking about what happens when the water is warm, how coral bleaching actually happens. So it's a shift in topic. When ocean water is warm, even by a few degrees, the coral polyps spit out the zooanthellae. This causes the reef to lose its color, turning white. This is the first and most visible sign of coral bleaching. Okay, I have a transition word here, so you know that I'm going to shift topics. Although devastating for tourists to coral reefs, the loss of color is not why warming waters are coral's real enemy. When the coral polyps evict their colorful boarders, the zooanthellae, they are cutting themselves off from their primary food source. They're starving themselves. So now I'm going to have a shift in topic. Coral can bounce back from a bleaching event, right? I'm going to talk about here how coral can't survive after multiple bleaching events. Coral can bounce back from a bleaching event. However, heat waves are becoming more and more frequent due to climate change, which doesn't allow them time to fully recover. So I'm actually going to start a new paragraph for this testimony. I want it to stand on its own. Those that survived 1 year of bleaching, said Mark Aiken, coordinator of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Coral Reef, are less likely to endure another event and are more vulnerable to disease like drought-weakened trees in the American Southwest that are now susceptible to bark beetle infestation. Okay, I have a transition phrase here, and I wanted that testimony to stand on its own, so I'm going to start a new paragraph. For example, when scientists surveyed the damage of the 2016 heat wave that hit Australia's Great Barrier Reef, they found that over half of the reef had died due to either starvation or disease. So here's my concluding sentence. So I want to make sure that this concluding sentence stands out. So I'm going to start a new paragraph. Or this concluding sentences, I guess it's two. Few reefs will survive the ever-warming waters caused by climate change. Those that do will suffer the impacts of ocean acidification, another byproduct of our increased carbon emissions. Okay, I want you to notice that my paragraphs are really short. You do not have to indent for every paragraph. I just did because I wanted to keep it really close together so you could see it all on one page. But I want to show you again that when you write your informational article, they can just be spaces in between each of your paragraphs. So if you just hit enter, you can create this space in between each of your small paragraphs. Okay, get started paragraphing.